It played into every kind of cliche that I've seen about the far left being chaotic.
People don't like governments that do things to cut off another party in order to get themselves elected the next time.
If you could lend us your vote at this election.
Ruth's working on the rebuild right there. Hello and welcome to Electoral Dysfunction from Sky News with me, Beth Rigby.
Me, Ruth Davidson.
And me, Harriet Harman.
And it's a special Q&A episode from us this week. So thank you. Loads of you have sent us in all these fabulous questions.
Yeah, and it looks like there's quite a few from me today. So thank you for putting me on the spot with questions about the Scottish elections and about the Tory party.
Remember to send us your questions on the burner phone. Just WhatsApp us on 07934 200 444, or you can always email electoraldysfunction@sky.uk.
Right, let's get going. First up, we have a voice note. I love a voice note from Darren. Ruth, I think you're going to have to answer this one.
I'm a Conservative Party member and have always voted Conservative, but the current political reality for the Conservative Party really scares me. Is it time for us Conservatives to unite under Kemi Badenoch, irrespective of whether we are one nation or right-wing Conservatives, as a house divided cannot stand? If not, will we be condemned to another 5 years of this awful Labour government at the next election?
Darren sopped it to you, Ruth. Let's have it.
Yeah, so I think Darren's right about a couple of things. One, united parties tend to do better than divided parties. Two, I actually think that there's quite a lot of responsibility on the leader of a political party that's just moved from government to opposition to try and bring people together under one banner. And we've discussed it on the pod before. And I think that one of the ways in which it would be easy or indeed advisable or effective to do so is to actually strip back what conservatism is, because after 5 leaders who all undid things that the previous leader had done or did different things, one of the difficulties Rishi Sunak had at the election last year was that there wasn't an actual narrative line about what being a Conservative is, was, or stood for. So one of the easiest ways to do that, and most effective, is to strip it back to talk about Conservative values. So to talk about all of the things that unite us as people that have previously voted Conservative. So things like, your commitment to sound money, commitment in constitution to the country, to talk about personal choice, personal freedom, personal responsibility, to talk about aspiration and why it's not a dirty word, to talk about things like how we can value vocational education in the same ways we value academic education. So all of these things that kind of underpin the kind of Conservative Party as value statements, which doesn't mean that you have to get into policy statements, which doesn't mean that you have to start closing off various avenues. It's ways in which you can let people feel that either voted for you in the past or may have switched their vote to Labour this time but have got buyer's remorse, feel that they have an accessible route back into the party. Because fundamentally, winning elections is about attracting the largest, most disparate group you can to your banner. So I think part of my issue, and I would love Kemi Badenoch to succeed. I would love her to start firing on all cylinders to make sure that she kind of gets everybody on board, that she provides an effective opposition, because fundamentally effective oppositions make better governments, and we would get a better Labour government if the Tory party was a better opposition. I would love for all of that to happen, and where I've been critical is because I'm not seeing it happen, or I'm seeing it not happen enough. So I think that there is a lot that we can do as a party to show why we're still a potential vehicle for people that can make this country a better place. But that also takes responsibility from the person leading the party to define us in that way so that we feel comfortable under her banner. So running off and only talking about a few very narrow policy areas that can be quite divisive to stave off reform on the right flank, for example, that doesn't make you feel like you have a home in the party you've always been a member of. And making sure that there are voices across the party which show the breadth of our party is important too, so that it's a party that does have room for example, a Tom Tugendhat, as well as, a Gerald Howarth. We are a broad church party and we are more successful when we are.
Okay.
Thus endeth the sermon of breadth in politics.
That was good, that. Okay.
It's almost like I used to, do this for a living. Do you want the stump speech? It doesn't matter if you've never voted Conservative before. It doesn't matter if you think that voting for us. If you can lend us your vote at this election.
Oh, my God.
If you believe, then you are one of us. If you think,
There's that. Look, Ruth's working on the rebuild right there. That was good, Ruth. Enjoyed that.
I think that basically when Ruth said you don't have to worry about what you believe in, just vote Conservative, it reminds me of what Robin Cook used to say about when he was studying to be a priest. He was studying to be ordained, and he said to the senior guy, I'm sorry, I don't think I can carry on with going to, be ordained because I've lost my faith in God. And the guy said, oh, that doesn't matter at all. You can still carry on and be ordained. And he said, and at that point, he really decided it was not the point to carry on. Perhaps we should leave Robin Cook out and get on to Alan.
Yeah, let's get on to Alan.
Indeed, yeah, because it sounds like I got put under pressure, but it's only right now that we put a question to Harriet about the Labour Party. So Here is one from Alan, who says, will the new Jeremy Corbyn / Zarah Sultana party effectively become an insurrection movement of professional eco-climate protesters and pro-Palestinian agitators?
Oof. That's a zinger, isn't it? Before you answer that, Harry, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to think about how to bat that zinger away from Alan. A bit of background on this. Just before the summer, Zarah Sultana, who used to be a Labour MP, announced a new party splitting from the Labour Party and working with Jeremy Corbyn, who you will probably all know ran as an independent MP in the last general election. And Zarah was one of the 7 left-wing MPs who lost the Labour whip in 2024 after voting against the government on the 2-child benefit cap. You'll know since then 4 more MPs have also lost the whip, and that was for the welfare reforms, although the government said it was also about persistent disobedience. But anyway, Harriet, what do you make of it? Presumably you think they should shut up and get behind Starmer or join the Greens? What do you think?
Well, there's the Greens, there's the Lib Dems, there's the Gaza Independents, and now there's potentially the new Zarah Sultana, Jeremy Corbyn party. But I think that one of the issues is, well, what should the government do about all of this? And, oh my goodness, should the government be doing more on immigration because they've got a challenge from reform? Or should they be doing more on green stuff and being much stronger on Gaza because they've got a challenge from this new potential party? And I think that it's different. If you're actually in government, you should do things that you promised to do and that you believe in, and that's what your responsibility of having the power of government's about. And I think that people don't like governments that do things to cut off another party in order to get themselves elected the next time. So I think, in a way, the government should not focus on what is going on with these additional parties, but just get on with being a really good government and governing according to its principles. And I hate it when people say, oh, the government is doing this because of reform, or they're doing this because of Jeremy Corbyn. Because if they were doing it just because of that, they shouldn't be in government anyway.
But Harriet, are you? What's really interesting about Alan's question, and there's a couple of things that I sort of think about that immediately sprung to mind. I mean, one thing is there seems to be at the moment, there does seem, particularly for the left of the Labour Party, a push factor away from Labour. Is there a pull factor towards the Green Party? You've got this guy, Zach Polanski. He's a member of the Green Party in the London Assembly. He's running to be the leader of the Green Party, sort of running on an eco-populist platform. Can you see a world in which there's a fusion of these progressive left-wing parties that the Greens are going to, potentially join up with this Corbyn outfit? Or you must be a bit worried, Harriet, that actually what this could do between the Greens, between Corbyn, Sultana, between some of the other groups you were talking about, that it begins to split the vote on the left, and that would be bad for Starmer, wouldn't it?
There's a number of issues there, one of which is whether or not these parties have got sufficient in common that they're going to form some sort of alliance. But the other is whether or not the voters will do tactical voting in different constituencies and pick one or other of these parties, depending on who they think's got the best chance of beating Labour at that. But I think that when it comes to the issue of the environment, the government is and should be pressing ahead with, Ed Miliband being the Secretary of State, really pushing ahead on green stuff. And it's doing that. And, really stepping up its protest on Gaza, because these are all the kind of right things to do. And I think there is a temptation, if you're in government, possibly sometimes to be distracted, to look at what the political opposition is doing when you should be thinking about what you're doing, being held to account, yes, but not looking over your shoulder and doing things because you want to somehow pull the rug out from others. And the reason why they should be doing stuff on immigration is because it's important, not because it's the basis on which Reform is trying to get votes.
I mean, just quickly for you, Ruth, do you kind of agree with Alan that this Corbyn Sultana party could become as he puts it, an insurrection movement of eco-climate protesters, pro-Palestinian agitators? And do you think that splits on the left help the Conservatives? Presumably you do.
Well, I mean, first of all, I don't think it's going anywhere. I think even the shambolic way it was launched, where Zarah Sultana basically announced it and Jeremy Corbyn's team went, actually, we hadn't kind of agreed this yet, folks. And then it took a couple of days to catch up. And it was shambolic. And it played into every kind of cliche that I've seen about the far left being chaotic, being splitters, that kind of Monty Python sketch about, we're not the People's Front of Judea, we're the Judean People's Front, god damn it. That whole sense of it. It had a real sense of that about it. And there is a sense that when you've got so many of these groups in a particular space, that it all just becomes noise, and it's very hard to build a campaigning infrastructure around it, to have, to be able to target seats where you might, be able to get councillors in and then build an infrastructure and then get MPs in and all the rest of it. So I think there will always be, for a group of people, there will always be a certain affection for Jeremy Corbyn, for how close he came as the narrative has arisen in 2017, sort of discounting the fact that they did actually lose that election and then he lost quite a lot in 2019. There will always be that sense of almost the Magic Grandpa people, the Seven Nations, Jeremy Corbyn, sort of White Stripes people, who will think, if we only had a real socialist in government. Real socialism has never been tried here. But, I mean, is he making a comeback? No. I just think it's going nowhere.
I do think what is interesting about all of this is that if increasingly the Labour left feel that they do not have a political home in the broad church of the Labour Party, and the Green Party do move to sort of try and pull in the Labour left, it could be quite interesting to see what happens with the Green Party if they choose to go that direction. Anyway, and I think that's where Polanski wants to take it. And as I said, he's looking to lead the party. So I do think that is something to watch. But I'm quite interested in it.
In terms of the party, I think that Keir Starmer has already said Labour is not the party of the far left. It's the party of the centre and the centre left. So he already dispatched a load of people from the party and therefore the question is whether or not they can be another force. But I don't think it will be that there will be more people leaving the Labour Party to go there, because I think the writing on the wall's already been there since Keir Starmer took over the
yeah,
leadership.
but what I mean is whether voters that are fed up with the Labour Party, if the Greens can reinvent themselves in that, as I said, in that kind of eco but very left-wing policies space, whether that appeals to maybe some younger voters.
And as we've seen from reform, coherence and a political organisation or coherent policies are not something that necessarily voters always demand. Would that they did.
And I think it's important to sort of reflect on the fact that the UK is quite unusual across Europe, perhaps as a byproduct of the fact that we have first past the post rather than proportional representation, but that Green parties have been in power in coalition or have had significant bulwarks in Parliament in a lot of other European countries in the very recent past. And in Scotland. So in terms of the kind of the coalition that they had with the SNP, it didn't run for a full term, but they were part of that coalition government. But you also see in Germany, you've seen in Ireland, you've seen in a number of Scandinavian countries. And you've also seen locally, you've had a Green council in Bristol that has actually been in power, that have made decisions. So they really could be cusping. And I think the rise of Reform slightly overshadowed how much better they did at the general election last year than they had done in previous years. There's an actual parliamentary grouping now. So, the Greens could be on the cusp of doing something really quite interesting and quite disruptive in UK politics. But again, not quite using the microphone in the way that Reform are.
All right, well, look, we're going to take a quick ad break now. And then when I come back, I've got more questions for you, Ruth Davidson. OK, we are back and we have more about Scotland for you, Ruth. This is from Marianne. She sent us this question after listening to us talk about Starmer's first year. She says, just listening to Keir Starmer talk about what they've delivered in the first year, and almost every single achievement relates to only England and or Wales. NHS, education are devolved issues. Does this put Scottish Labour on the back foot for the Scottish elections? Ruth, you can start, but I reckon Harriet might have a point of view too. She does, she's nodding.
I think she will.
Right, go on. Take it away, Ruth.
Well, I think it really shows just how much devolution has occurred in Scotland, and the devolution journey is different from Wales and different from Northern Ireland. So all of the NHS has devolved, all of policing, all of the courts, all of, did I say education? All of health is devolved. Most of transport, apart from some one or two cross-border things. We also have some taxation, some welfare that's devolved. So the suite of powers that is controlled by Holyrood is massive, and quite a lot of people outside of Scotland don't really understand that. So quite a lot of what a UK Prime Minister might talk about is either sort of England only, or it's England and Wales together. I think that it is incumbent on UK governments, and I would bang on when it was my own side that were in government, to make sure that they get it right and don't just act like England is the whole of the UK, because it really annoys people in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, and for broadcasters as well when they're asking the questions.
Yeah, all right, I'm feeling bad now. Hold my hand up.
Sorry. Yes, Beth, I'm going to give you an upgrade, give you a spanking. Learn your devolution.
I like getting told off via Zoom by you. It's a weekly pleasure.
But the Scottish Labour leader, Anas Sarwar, is pretty competent. He'd been an MP before he'd been an MSP. He's been around a long time. He speaks well. He carries himself well. He looks like a potential First Minister. These things shouldn't matter, but they do. And there was a period where his popularity peaked and he was eclipsing the SNP. And he's having a much tougher time, having his entire political leadership been able to rail against the SNP in Holyrood and the Tories in London. He's now having to defend or decide where he wants to put sort of clear blue water between his devolved policies and what Keir Starmer is doing, and explain why they're different, or back Keir Starmer. If you look at voting coalitions that will take him past the SNP, remembering that he's coming from third, the official opposition in Scotland is actually the Conservatives, not Labour. So they're coming from third in Scotland, so it's a big ask. In the 1 year that Keir Starmer has been Prime Minister, he's managed to annoy farmers over the inheritance tax. He's managed to sell out fishermen. That's what the fishermen are saying. And the one thing that Starmer throws into speeches when he's talking about Scotland and what Labour are doing for Scotland is he's talking about GB Energy being set up. and being housed in Scotland. And it's kind of a Potemkin policy at the moment, because GB Energy isn't a thing at the moment, and it doesn't replace the 200,000 jobs that rely on the North Sea. If the North Sea went, that's all of the ancillary jobs attached to the Oil Sea North and gas jobs, North Sea oil and gas jobs that are there. Not all of them in Scotland. Around Aberdeen in the northeast, it's generally assumed to be about 60,000 jobs. But that's massive for Scotland.
Harriet?
Marianne's question was, does it put Labour on the back foot for Keir Starmer to only be talking not about issues of health and education and transport in Scotland, but to be only talking about England? And the answer is it puts them on the front foot, because Labour wants to be contesting with the SNP in these elections coming up next year on the basis that the SNP have failed on those issues which are devolved to them on education, on health. You know, results are falling in schools, people can't get a GP appointment, the waiting lists aren't coming down. And so really, when Keir Starmer is saying, look at the good things we've done, for example, getting waiting lists down in England, that's not because it doesn't matter about waiting lists in Scotland. It's to show in England, where Labour is running things, waiting lists are coming down and getting better. But in Scotland, where they're being run by the SNP, things are staying very bad indeed. So, you know, the incumbents are the SNP, and Labour wants to be focusing on the things that they've got responsibility for in the devolved administration. Because if it becomes, who do you prefer, the SNP or Keir Starmer, then that's not the thing that the Scottish Labour are trying to do. They want to make it, do you want the SNP with their incumbency and their letting things go from bad to worse, or do you want SNP, do you want Anna Sarwar to come in as a Labour administration instead of the SNP in Holyrood?
And in a perfect kind of world, that is how it would work. The thing that the SNP have done brilliantly for decades now is they don't run on their own record, and they don't run as a party of incumbency. They run as an insurgency against Westminster. And they have pulled off a fantastic trick in Scotland, and this is part of why their political gravity has sort of been defying gravity for as long, is that they set themselves up as a counterpoint to Westminster. They don't actually defend their own record. So Harriet was there talking about, since Labour came in, they've done a really good job in England of improving the number of appointments people can get and sort of starting to bite into the backlog from COVID. But actually the SNP would never measure themselves against that. They'd measure themselves against where Labour has been running health in Wales for the last 26 years and say Wales has consistently had the worst numbers on X or Y or Z. Anas is going to have to be fleet of foot. Like I say, he's coming from third, so the Tories are going to have a bit of a say as well. And one of the things that's really interesting about Holyrood and the way it works is that up until now, it's always been a 5-party parliament run along the additional member system, which is a form of proportional representation. If Reform do well, it'll become a 6-party parliament, makes it almost impossible to be a majority government. And in all of the parliaments that we've had since 1999, there's only been one majority government. They've always either been minority or coalition. And it's where do these alliances happen? And therefore, what does the policy platform become? And who will do deals with others? Because there's a lot of parties in there who are avowedly unwilling to deal with particular other parties that have already counted each other out from forming a coalition. So it could be quite a messy election next year in Scotland.
That was fascinating. I enjoyed that. Thank you.
OK, this one's also from a Scottish listener. Caitlin in Glasgow wants our recommendations. She says, ED, yes. Electoral Dysfunction is actually the only podcast I listen to, and once a week is simply not enough. My question, therefore, is what podcast would each of you recommend to fill the 6 days I don't get the joy of listening to ED?
Oh, that's a nice
Yeah,
message,
it is nice,
isn't it? I like that one. Thanks, Caitlin. Shall I go for... I've got millions. Do you want to hear all my recommendations?
Yeah, you probably are the most audible.
I'm obsessed and I listen to absolutely loads. So, right, Caitlin, you ready for it? Here are Beth's podcasts. So for newsy ones and current affairs ones, I would recommend Pod Save America. I just love it. It's one of my favourite US podcasts. If you don't want one as long as that, because they go on for like over an hour, there's also, and I'm not just plugging this because it's Sky product, it's a really great podcast, which is Trump 100, and they're short, bite-sized, 15-minute episodes. So if you want a bit of US politics, also the New York Times Daily podcast, absolutely love that too. The other one that I have just listened to and I found it addictive, again, we've had her on our podcast, Debbie Haynes. The War Game is exceptional. Again, I'm not just plugging it because it's my friend Debbie. I absolutely loved that. Then what I like to do over the summer holidays is I like to listen to sort of story podcasts. So there's one called Scamander. Brilliant story, won't say any more. There's one on the BBC Sounds, Who Killed Emma? That's by Sam Polin, and that was about a prostitute that was killed in Scotland. Ruth, you'll know this story very well.
Yeah, I covered it when I was a journalist, actually.
Sam Polin, who's an investigative journalist, tells the story of this it's like a true crime, and she tells the story. It's absolutely brilliant. I listened to that when I was marathon training. Happily Never After, that is a great pod sort of story. I listened to that in Greece when I was doing laps of the swimming pool. Enjoyed that a lot. Last Man Standing by The Times. That's about what happened to a British journalist that disappeared in the Middle East. That is brilliant. So there's some of my... I could go on, should I just not? Everyone says that I should try The Rest Is Classified, so I'm going to try that over the summer. What about you two? Can you give me some more recommendations?
Ruth, you start.
So I'm going to go with a friend of the pod, actually, who is Matt Ford, who's helped us out before on some things. He's a stand-up comedian that used to also be a Labour advisor and staffer. And he also writes for Spitting Image and does the voices. He's a very good mimic. He does the voices on Spitting Image of Keir Starmer, working people, and Donald Trump. Beautiful, beautiful. He does a beautiful impression of Donald Trump. And Matt's got two. So he does something called The Political Party, where he hires out a theatre in London's West End and interviews a politician for like a full kind of broadcast hour in front of a live audience. That's only out once a month, so that's not going to fill up all your 6 days. But he's been doing it for years. He's got an enormous sort of library, and you find out things about politicians and the human side of them that you didn't know before. So that's quite a good one. And on a completely different note, he and the, journalist Alice Levine, is that what we would call her? Sort of presenter, other things. They do something called A British Scandal, and they chat through like a big scandal at some point in British history. Not all political. Some of them are from entertainment. Some of them are kind of murders. Some of them are something else, and they do that. I'm a big fan of Matt, and I would direct you in his sort of direction.
I'm wondering whether sometimes I think that I shouldn't be listening to dozens of podcasts and scrolling massively through my Instagram, but should be like being in mindful, contemplative silence or reading a book. But because I'm absolutely always got double standards, I do spend all my time listening to podcasts. I've got 3 to recommend only. One is Political Currency. I know I always say I'm banning myself from listening to political men talking to other political men about what men have done in politics, but I do listen to Political Currency, particularly because of the economic chat on it. I listen to The Rest Is Politics, which is Alistair Campbell talking to Rory Stewart often about the whole world, and I listen to that mostly because of their sort of global perspectives. Yeah. But I also listen to, and one I really like, is Miss Me, which is Lily Allen and Mikita Oliver.
Oh, yes.
And in fact, Lily Allen, who's a singer and an actress, her and Mikita, they talk so interestingly and so thoughtfully and intelligently on their podcast, and very engagingly as well. I mean, like the next episode, they're going to be talking about self-esteem. What does it actually mean? And it goes from the kind of deeply philosophical to the very, day-to-day. So I think they're good as well.
Yeah, well, there you go. There's some recommendations from Beth, from Harriet, from myself. That is your lot for today. We love these episodes, though, so we will have more for you very soon. Keep your questions coming in.
Yeah, the success or failure of this depends on you and you sending us in questions. So send them to our burner phone. The number to WhatsApp is 07934 200 444, or you can always email us at electoraldysfunction@sky.uk. That's your lot for today. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.